Welcome back to GRD132, Typography 1, to our ex10, our exercise in readability, where we're working on just a document in Adobe Illustrator. We could have been working on this in Microsoft Word, but we're working in Illustrator because we have a lot more typography controls here than we do in something like Gravit, for example. And it uses terminology like leading and tracking and kerning, more traditional typography terminology, first line indents, space before, space after. You'll see that stuff in Word as well. But what we did first is we shortened the line lengths, we changed to a nice serif font, and all this stuff that we're talking about is coming from here. So let's just see what we did here. Shorter line lengths, and we did larger margins. We removed the justified right alignment and made it ragged right or aligned left, or justified left, lots of different terminology to do that. Multiple columns. Now, we didn't do anything with multiple columns, but we can do that, by the way, in Illustrator if you ever need to. Now, right now, it'll make our headline in multiple columns, which I wouldn't want to do, so I'd have to take that out. But they do have a way to go to type and area type options, and you could easily choose 2 columns. The gutter is the space in the middle of the columns. You could make it 3 columns, 2 columns, and you could do something like that. Now it's putting that over there, which I would not want, although it does help readability because the columns are shorter. So shorter columns, better readability. And you know, it doesn't mean we couldn't do something like that either. Actually, you know what? Why not? Why not do it 2 columns? So I'll leave it like that for now. So it won't look like this exactly. It'll be in 2 columns, and we'll try to even it off real nice. Now, since we're in here, one thing that's happening here is this leading is getting really tight because I think it's picking up this 12-point leading. And another thing, let me show you. If I go to Type, Show Hidden Characters, let's see where the paragraphs are here. So this is a paragraph, and then this is a paragraph. We have space before these paragraphs. And remember, just like in Word, these are the hidden characters. So I'm going to highlight this paragraph up here, and I'm going to change the leading to auto. And you can see what that does. Now, first of all, it doesn't look nice because pill is broken off and znr is on another line. So the history of, and we might want to put Pilsner beer. Now, I could go here and do a shift return or put a line break. And that looks a little better. That's a line break. That keeps it from being another paragraph. And what that means is if you ever had to break something, like if you ever went into one of these paragraphs and you're like, oh, I want gathered on the next line, and you hit return, it puts a space. Just like if you did that with a bullet list, and you don't want a space, you don't want a new paragraph. You would actually just want a line break. And you got to be careful about doing that because then you end up with a lot of line breaks in there. But if you ever have to break something, shift return is a way to do it without creating a new paragraph. So that's what I did up here. I broke this headline on 2 lines without making it a new paragraph. And what I'll do also is I'll tighten the leading on this. Now you typically want to tighten leading on headlines. You want them to be closer together to look like one unit, whereas the body copy we spread out a little bit more to lighten it so it's a little easier to read so it doesn't feel crowded when you're reading a lot of it. But when there's only a little bit here, you can get these nice and close together so the history of Pilsner beer is read together as one element. So it's at 28.8, which is as auto right now. So I'm going to take it down, and I'll take it down to maybe 26, maybe even 25, maybe even 24. And it all depends on where the descenders are meeting uppercase letters or capital letters, or if there's any ascenders that they may be hitting. If there was a letter here like an L, that wouldn't look right, but that works okay. Now let me click off of this so we don't see all the lines there, and let me also turn off the hidden characters. And we can see that headline looks nice. And it's centered over this column, and that's okay. And we don't have even columns right now, but we're going to throw some subheadings in here. And what I'm just going to do is go down here, and I'll show you what I did here. I just put now enters Joseph Grohl, and here I put a beer like no other. I just put 2 subheadlines in there. And I'll go here and I'll put now enters Joseph Grohl, and I'll hit enter, and you can see now this is the subheadline. It doesn't look like a subheadline, and I can make it bigger. Right now it's 12. I could make it 14. I could make it bold. And it still doesn't look like a subheadline, and the reason being is this isn't right next to this. There's that extra space because we have the space before. So what I'll have to do, and it all depends on whether you did space before or space after, because this is the space before, I have to go here and go to my paragraph, and I'm going to remove some of that and go down probably to maybe around like 4 or something and see how that looks. That looks a lot better. So I want more space up here, less down here. Maybe even I'll go down to 2. I think that looks okay. So now enters Joseph Grohl. I'll put 3 dots, which actually is an ellipsis, but I'm just putting in manually the 3 dots. Now, another way to do a subheadline to make it stand out is to use a different typeface. And one of the nice things to do is use a sans serif, which has nice contrast between the serif of the body copy. So instead of Minion Pro, I'm going to go up here and choose Myriad Pro, which is a nice generic Adobe Illustrator sans serif. And it's certainly bolder. Now it really stands out nicely. And that looks pretty good. And you can tell that's going with that paragraph. There's no doubt there's less space below, there's more space above. And what I'll also do is maybe just copy this since I already have it in that style. And I'll go here and I'll paste it and hit enter. So it's a new paragraph. Now it didn't keep that spacing because remember that space is related to this. So I'd have to take this down to 2. This is the space before for that paragraph. And notice I'm just clicking in here. I don't have to highlight the whole paragraph. I'll just go in there and I'll put a beer like no other. And I'll make sure I spell it right. And now that's a nice kind of sub-headline there. Now this isn't even yet, and there's ways we could deal with making columns more even. I'm not worried about that right now. That's not the issue. We're not doing a lot of layout. The idea is to make this readable. So if we had to finish this off and put something here, you could throw a picture in or anything, we're going to do that when we work with the web. But right now it's nice and readable, and I think we're pretty good. I don't think we have to do a whole lot more with it. Let me just click off of this. I'll move this over, and I could even hide the guides. If I go to View, I could go to Guides and hide guides, and that looks nice. And we have a light leading, a little more than auto. Auto is 20%. We probably have it like at 130% or 140%. We have it at 16 point. It's 12 point body copy. We have it about 16 point leading, so it's a little bit higher. We have space between the paragraphs. We have space between the paragraphs with a subheading. We put our subheading in a different font, different typeface, and actually a different category. We put it in sans serif, which really pops on top of the kind of lighter body copy that we have going on here. We kept our heading in the serif face, but we put it in a nice bold face. You could put it in italic if you want. That might look okay if it doesn't conflict with anything else. If you did it bold italic, it would probably look okay as a heading. I don't know if that helps the readability. I think it looks more readable like that, to be honest. I don't think we need an italic. Remember, the idea of italic is to actually go in here and make things stand out. So if I went in here and Czech Republic was standing out for whatever reason, and I put an italic, that kind of stands out. Your eye kind of picks up on that difference. But you don't want to read a lot of body copy in that italic. It's just harder to read. It's easier to read regular Roman characters. So I'll leave that in there. Czech Republic isn't a title or anything that has to be in italic, but I'm just putting it there as an example. And I think everything looks okay. So I'm just going to save this, or I'll do a file save as. And I'll put a to call after it because I did this in 2 columns. And I'll just save this. And even though I'm saving it from Illustrator, I'm saving it as a PDF, so it's easy to post when we upload this. So we did that in class. And if you miss class, I'll have a different way of doing it. If you can't do it in Illustrator, maybe we'll do it in Word or something like that. But this is kind of what I wanted to show here. I'll zoom out. And you can see this is a nice looking document, a lot easier to read. Even with the short columns, even easier. We would just have to even things off a little bit. But you could also just go here and shorten that, and even things off a little bit. And already that looks nice, depending on what you wanted to do with that line down there. There's ways to go through and even the columns, but because we have the headline in there, we could even take the headline out of this box and have it sit on top of everything. But right now, that's a nice looking document, nice readability. It's not exciting. This isn't exciting stuff here, but readability is always very important, no matter if you're a designer, if you're a business person, whatever you do, if you're a writer, whatever you're doing, web designer, you want to have good readability. If you put anything in writing, you want to have it look good, you want to have it look professional, and you don't want to ever have your content be hard to read because of the typeface you picked, because of the layout you chose, because of the formatting that you used. Very important to look professional in everything you do. So that's part of ex10, what we've been working with. And in ex11, we're going to be working on the web. So we're going to be making this look less generic and easier to read on a web page. Now, not that this isn't hard to read. By default, it's easy to read. It's just straight vanilla content. But, there's really long line lengths. We want to change that a little bit. We want to spread this out. We want to do some things that we're doing in print. There's no reason we can't do them in print, and there's no reason we have to just stick to generic Times New Roman. So we're going to use some Google fonts in here to make it look nice too. So that'll be part of ex11. But before that, I wanted to go over ex10, especially if you missed class, or even if you're in class, just to review that a little bit in terms of readability.